form blocks built. You can see two pieces here. They'll come together when you put the piece of metal in between. I'll screw in some wing nuts on both sides and tighten them down to hold the metal in between, and use that to hammer down the flanges. We're going to take one of these pieces and use it to trace a pattern on the aluminum for our actual cutout. So now what I'm looking for here is I'm going to use one edge of the aluminum as simply where my one of my edges is going to be, so I won't have to cut that edge. That'll simplify things a little bit. So you only really have two edges to cut. And the way we're going to do this is actually start by measuring out from the edge about, you can see I'm clamping down on the edge, measure out 15-30 seconds. That's what the plans call for this particular rib, right? I get my edge about 15-30 seconds away along the edge. Snap that guy into place. And then what I'm going to use to lay out the rest of it is this nice washer. I've read about this trick online from many other builders. This washer is pretty much designed so that it's a washer that has a ring. The outside ring is just less than ½ an inch. It's actually about 7/16, so that gives me enough. When I put my pin on the edge, it'll give me just about 1/2 of an inch, or 15-30 seconds. So I'll take that washer, take it to the edge, and trace out all around my part. Very easy process. You can see it a little bit better from up here. You see it's smearing here on the metal. It's not really the metal here. I'm using coated aluminum, so it's got a plastic protective layer on the outside, and so of course the washer is going to smear it a little bit. That doesn't matter much because that plastic will eventually come off when we are doing final installation. So with that, we'll actually come around here now. You can see from this angle. The next step is pretty cool, and common practice that a lot of builders use is to actually score. Well, we're not ready for that. So after we've traced the pattern, the other thing we're going to want to do, let's take it back over here for a second. The other key point before we remove the clamp, we've traced the outside pattern. That's pretty important. But the other thing we're going to do is center punch a couple holes. First, we're going to center punch holes on the corners where we're going to have to drill eventually, those inside the flange edges. So since this form block is right to the inside edges, you make it right at the point in the corner here. Pretty straightforward. There's not one on this side. And then finally, I'm going to actually center punch where I'm going to have to drill so that the form block, the screws from the wing nuts will go all the way through, and clamp down on the form block. Now that we've got that done, we can actually remove the form block and cut out our part. So we're going to move the camera here for a second. Hopefully get a pretty good angle here. There we go. Now what we'll do here is I will take my ruler straight edge. I'm sorry, my ruler is my straight edge. And I'm going to go just inside of that line. So I don't want right on the edge because I want to actually smooth it out a little bit, file it down. It doesn't have to be too perfect here because this is the flange. So you want to, if you're off by a 32nd of an inch, it shouldn't make any difference structurally. So anyway, I'll get that lined up. Do a couple I do about 8 or 9 scores. This is 025 aluminum, so 8 or 9 scores will definitely. Oh, yeah, I slipped a little. Luckily, I didn't slip in the direction of my part. So I scored that aluminum. We'll have to mark that so I don't try to use that aluminum here. Finally, I'm going to score this line here. That scored pretty well. Of course, all these little metal scraps are not your friends, so you want to get it off of your workbench as soon as you can. Now, for this last one, I think I won't score it. I'll actually use the snips because I can cut this down. It's a little easier to get things started. I'll be using a bandsaw to cut that line anyway. So now I'm just careful to be careful to move the camera so place that you can see here without it breaking. Just be careful to bend just a couple times. You don't want to bend in any one place too harsh because you'll end up putting a bend in the aluminum itself, and you don't want that, obviously. So then I come back. I have to use an X-Acto knife. I'm cutting the plastic. This aluminum is coated on both sides, so obviously the bending and breaking the aluminum is not going to tear through that plastic, except on the side that you scored it. So now we got this little one here, and it takes just a couple bends and it breaks away. And there we go. Now we have our raw piece pretty much cut down. We've got a little bit more work to do here to finish off where the lines are going to be. One thing I like to do is I take my block again. I found just in the limited amount of work that I've done here, now I can visually see where those center punch holes are and line my block back up. And the reason I'm doing this is I'm going to go ahead and make sure I draw some of the lines. Well, actually, I'll be drawing those lines when I punch the hole. The only lines I need to really draw are out here to show where the end of the flange needs to be. I'm just